Hey, Joseph.
How's it going, brother?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
All good, man.
Are you Joseph, Johannes, or Jacob?
I was just turning the brightness up. We're good.
Are you Joseph, Johannes, or John?
Just Joe, mate. Just Joe. Joe, easy
Joe.
peasy.
Oh, okay. That's a very interesting name.
My
Joe,
my
how are
mom
you
my
doing
mom and
today?
dad my mom and dad are the only ones who call me Joseph.
Okay. How are you doing today?
Yeah, all good, mates. Still getting into the new job. It's
Hmm.
weird not being so heavily involved in South African football. I've lived this for the last 10 years or whatever it's been. So,
Hmm.
it's an interesting change of scene. Put it that way.
Hmm. I'm glad that you wore a yellow cap today. Ah.
I know what I'm doing. I put this on especially for you.
Oh, okay. No, you're a good man, Joe. You're a good man.
Yeah, no,
Joe,
just for all the people who think I've had a lot of stick from the Sundowns fans over the years, so just thought I'd represent a little bit today.
no, sure, you're a good man. Joe, first thing, we are here because we want to appreciate you as football fans.
Oh, thanks.
We want to show you love. Yeah, we want to show you how much we appreciate your work and how much even though we've abused you over the years, but I mean, deep down in our hearts, we valued your work.
Some of you, not everybody.
Yeah, Joe, how is everybody at home? This
Yeah,
question
everyone's
is
good.
important.
Yeah, everyone's good. I was meant to be back about 2 months ago already. I was meant to be back at the end of April. Obviously the COVID thing hit, all the flights shut down, so I'm still in Joburg. My mum and dad, they're going through a whole process of selling the house and all that kind of stuff back home. So I'm missing out on all that admin, which is good. I'm not having to help them pack, which I'm sure I'd be roped into that if I was back home.
How is Stephanie taking the news that you are going?
Yeah, Steph's all right. She's fine. Steph's got a good new job as well. She's got a new show on 5FM.
Hmm.
Obviously, big break for her career wise, big break for me career wise. We live in a modern world where it's a lot easier for our age group to deal with these kind of things than it was for our parents and stuff. So, you deal with what you deal with in this day and age. It's I suppose one of the main plus sides to this whole coronavirus situation is I'm getting to spend a bit more time with Steph than I thought I was going to. So, that's good.
Okay. Gifling says you are not going anywhere. You are going to stay here.
Nah, gift. I've got to go see him. He's on my list. He needs to stick it out in Denmark because I'll be a lot closer soon. I'm waiting for him to explode in Denmark so I can tell people that we're friends.
Please, Gift must know that he's also on our list. We'd like to have him here. We don't bite.
Now
Um,
everyone's on your list. If someone's good enough, they're on Sundowns list.
Joe, who inspired your journalism career?
Um, it's difficult to say because I don't think there was a specific person that inspired what I do and sort of my route. The main thing for me was I realized probably I don't know 13, 14 that I wasn't good enough to play.
Hmm.
Obviously we all grow up, we want to be professional footballers. We want to move into that scene. But I was lucky. I realized very very early that I wasn't good enough to take that route. And in my head, I just thought, what's the best way I can get into the football industry without actually playing it? And the written word was always something that came quite easily to me. Always liked writing, so I figured, that's a nice way in to basically get paid to watch football games. And the fact that I discovered that so early, I think really helped me because I was able to set the ball and sort of set things in motion early doors.
Hmm.
And I did my media studies. I did my NCTJ, which is a British journalism certificate. I did all that when I was a teenager. So that was kind of the route that I took and why I followed that path. I look at people like Henry Winter and some of the old school journalists in the UK that I've followed for a long time on social media and read their work for a long time. And yeah, they're people that I've sort of grown to admire over a long time. But for the most part, it's just it was a route for me to watch football for a living, and be involved in the football industry without actually being good enough to kick a ball around a pitch and get paid for it.
So at the age of 13, 14, that's when you realize that, no, you're a good gossiper.
Yeah, gossip is probably the wrong word. I try to avoid the gossip if I can. I try and deal with facts. But no, yeah. I mean, that was kind of the point when I realized that, I was all right at football. I'm not bad, but I was never going to be the next Benny McCarthy, put it that way.
Tell me, when you were 14, 15, who was your favorite player?
So I don't think anyone who knows me knows how much I love David Beckham. Beckham's been a hero of mine for as long as I can remember. My first childhood football crush was a guy called Benito Carbone. I don't know if you remember him. Benny played for Chelsea when I was probably, I think, between 6 and 9. So he was one of the first players that I watched, and I was like, wow, this is what football's about. This is what this is how it's going to go. But like I say, I think Beckham, that period, obviously I had my heroes that were playing for Sheffield Wednesday because that was the team I supported. But I also had that period when I think at that point, that was when the Arsenal Invincibles were around. And I just remember watching Vieira and Henry and those guys and just thinking, this is how football's meant to be played. And I think that's why I don't have another team in England. It's not really the way we work in the UK. I don't support a Premier League team and then Sheffield Wednesday as well. But if I was to pick a Premier League team, if someone put a gun to my head and said, you've got to pick one, I think it would be Arsenal. And that's purely because of how good that Invincibles team was.
Joe, why Sheffield Wednesday?
Birthright. No, there's no other reason. I was born in Sheffield. My dad is a Wednesdayite. My granddad's a Wednesdayite. I never got a choice. That's how it works for most people in England. It's not a case of picking a team that you like the style, picking a team that you like the way they work or the systems they have in place, or the style that they like to play in. For me, I didn't have a choice. Trust me, if I had a choice, I wouldn't be supporting Sheffield Wednesday because they've been pretty poor for a while now. But I think it's actually quite a nice thing. You're a Sundowns fan, right? So you know what it's like to win stuff. You win stuff every year. You support a football club that wins more games than they lose or draw, that has, for a long time won trophies. You've got especially right now, you've got, one of the best coaches in Africa at the helm. So you're a little bit spoiled, you know what it's like to win things. And if you have a season when you don't win 2 trophies, that's a bit of a disappointment, Whereas
true, yeah.
In my entire life, Sheffield Wednesday have won 2 things. We won the Rumbelows Cup back in '91, and we won the League One playoff final, back in 2005 when I was 15, and that's basically been it. So the way I see it is that when we do eventually win something, when I'm about 75, it's going to mean a lot. Whereas you guys, you kind of get used to winning, and I think it maybe loses some kind of its not loses its appeal, but you grow, your feelings to it get less because it becomes the norm. So that's one nice thing about supporting an average football club, is the highs mean a little bit more, I think, sometimes. Kind of how like it was for you guys when you won the Champions League, because that was the next step. So when you win, you get used to winning domestic trophies. So when you win the Champions League, all of a sudden that is now, massive. And that's kind of how I think I'll feel when Sheffield Wednesday eventually, if ever, win something.
You wrote a very nice article yesterday about Sheffield Wednesday visiting South Africa.
Yeah, that was...
Can you tell us about it, please?
An ode to my time in South Africa, really. I wanted to do a piece that would link, I suppose, my 2 worlds. I grew up with Sheffield Wednesday. I had a season ticket when I was younger, before I moved to South Africa. But South African football has been my life for the best part of a decade, and I wanted to do something that kind of linked those 2 worlds together. And I'm pretty happy that I managed to get Michael Tumbela and Gavin Hunt into a Sheffield newspaper. It's quite an achievement for me, especially so early. I didn't think I was going to get to do that, and to be honest, I don't think it'll be the last time I tell that story because, from what I can understand, that the game at Loftus when Sundowns played Wednesday was one of the first non-segregated British football games to happen in South Africa. So I'd quite like to speak to some more of the Wednesday boys about what it was like coming to South Africa in '92, because obviously that was a big time for South African football. It was just after you'd been readmitted into FIFA and all that kind of stuff. So I'd like to speak to some of the guys who actually made the trip. This time was more about the South African boys, and obviously speaking to Gavin and Mike, who are great characters and great people to have a chat with. So that was good for me, and to be able to pull on those contacts, it was nice.
So 2010, you took a long flight from Heathrow to OR Tambo. Take us through that game.
I flew straight into Cape Town that year. It was actually the second time. It was the second time I'd been to South Africa. I came originally with my mum and dad in 2006. We came on like a family holiday, and I just loved it. I thought the place was amazing. We did like a little bit of a tour. We spent some time in Cape Town, some time in Joburg. We stayed in a B&B in Soweto at one point. We did a bit of a trip into the northwest as well, and I just loved it here. Like, I was 16 years old, and it was just so different from any holiday I'd been on before. Obviously, we'd done little trips around Europe and things like that, but South Africa was just such an eye opener. And I remember coming here in 2006, and South Africa, I think, had just been announced as the 2010 hosts, and I just remember saying to my mum, "I'm going back for that. I'll be in South Africa for the 2010 World Cup." And she sort of kind of fobbed me off because I was 16 and it was in 4 years, and I think she just thought, he's just talking shit, really. He's got these pipe dreams, but yeah. So I made it happen, and in 2010 I was back. I didn't expect to be getting offered a job though. I didn't. When I came in 2010, I did like it's like a work experience thing with Sokladuma. I spent a month working at the company as an intern, and after that month they offered me a job, and yeah, the rest, as they say, is history.
History, yeah. How did you find working in a culturally diverse country like South Africa?
I really enjoyed it. I think it made me grow up a lot. I think it made me a lot more worldly wise. I think I became a much more rounded person because of it. You grow up in the UK with a lot of different types of privilege in the UK, and I think that when you come to South Africa and you actually live in South Africa, I think one of the things I've tried to explain to people is there's a big difference between visiting South Africa as a tourist and living here. And I think there's a lot to be said for sort of throwing yourself into the different cultures of South Africa. And I've loved it, mate. I think South Africa has made me a better person. I think it's become part of me, and I think that I am, like I say, a lot better for my time here. It was tough in the sense that I effectively was learning a new language when I moved to South Africa. I didn't come in here completely blind. I knew a lot of the South African boys who played in the UK, and Lucas Radebe was one of the first. He actually played in one of the first football games I ever went to watch. So I wasn't completely blind, but moving to a league where I effectively had to learn it from scratch was a challenge. And I think that was one of the challenges I enjoyed was, like I say, completely throwing myself into it. I remember one of the first things I had to do when I arrived is Peter du Toit, the guy who owns Laduma, my manager, he gave me this book written by a guy called Peter Roth, who's like a South African football historian. And I can't remember how long it was, but it was basically an entire history of South African football, going back, through when they had the separate leagues all the way up to, I can't remember when it went up to, because it was quite an old book. But basically, I had had to read that from start to finish. That was the sort of my first assignment was that. And the second one was Peter gave me a list of all the South African boys playing overseas. Every single one that they had on record. I had to basically get in touch with him. That's what he said. And he told me afterwards that he didn't expect me to get in touch with as many as I did. But that kind of, yeah, you guys know how much I sort of tried to cover the South African boys playing overseas and, you know, finding their goal, that kind of stuff. And that kind of kick-started that. That's how I became, you know, close with people like Ayanda Patosi and, you know, the guys who were young and overseas at that point. And yeah, it was, like I say, it was interesting because I had to sort of start fresh with a whole new football knowledge. And I've got to do it. Just a quick shout out to Vianney. VJ he's a hero, that guy. VJ was sort of my mentor when I first moved to South Africa, and Vij, I'll never forget, he gave me his contact list. I was a 20-year-old, new to the game, new in South Africa, and Vij just gladly handed over his contact list and said, if you can try get all these guys, go for it. And that was my, in those early days, that was my saving grace. The fact that Vij was just so willing to help me out and so willing to, you know, just pass me on to these people. I'll never be able to repay him for that, because, you know, this industry is a tough industry, and there's a lot of tough people in this industry, and there's a lot of, you know, secrecy and people trying to hold on to what they've got and not open it up for other people. And the fact that Vij was so open to me, you know, that meant the world to me at that time, and forevermore.
Yeah, no, true. And Joe, your best interviewee?
It's tough to say, really, because there's a lot of people that I wanted to interview that I never got to interview. I would love to, and I've said this before, especially in the time since I've left, I really regret not getting the chance to interview Pitso properly. It's one of my biggest regrets in my time in South Africa. You know, obviously it's stuff I tried to set up. I've had little chats with Pitso. You know, I've had the chance to speak one-on-one with him, but never really in an interview kind of space. And that I'll always regret that. I hope at some point something happens with Pitso when he goes global, and wherever I'm working, that I can, you know, get on the phone and say, you remember me? Can we have a chat? And I really hope that happens at some point. But in terms of the best interviews, look, it's probably going to come as no surprise. Stuart Baxter is up there. Stuart is, you know, I know people always made jokes about me and Stuart just because we are both British and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, anyone who's had the chance to speak to Stuart knows how insightful he is. And you know, you come out of interviews with him feeling smarter than you went in. And I think that there's a few people like that. Kevin Johnson's another one. Kevin is an incredibly intelligent bloke. I've got a lot of time for him. Rulani's brilliant. Rulani, when you speak to Rulani, if you ever get a chance to actually sit down with Coach Rulani, you leave there going, I think I need to read more books. I need to go read more about this game, because apparently I know nothing. You know, Rulani
he was here for our first guest. Yeah, we spoke for 2 hours.
You know what it's like. You know what it's like speaking to Rulani. But there's been a lot, mate. There's been a lot, and I think people are good for different reasons. Sometimes you come out of it where, you know, it's been another guy who I really like talking to is Camilo Macaco. Camo's just got a very different mindset to a lot of South African guys, in the sense that I think because he's been in Europe for so long, he's a lot less. I think guarded's probably the right word. You know, I've known Camo a long time. I mean, I've been speaking to Camo on and off since he was at Feyenoord. So we've created quite a nice relationship over the years, and I've always had a really nice open relationship with him, in terms of him being, like I say, not guarded when answering questions and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, there's a lot for, like I say, a lot for different reasons. And there will always be a lot of them that I wished I had the chance to speak to properly, but never did.
Yours?
Worst? I don't think there is really. There's some people that it's a little bit harder to interview because they are, like I say, they're quite guarded. They don't really want to open up. But I think that's part of that comes down to personalities. It comes down to language. It comes down to a lot of things. So, you know, I would never say someone, and I would certainly never say, you know, an interview has been tough, because I think it's unfair to the person, because there can be so many reasons for it. You know, if someone is you know, Zulu or whatever, like, it's very unfair for me to criticize because an interview was difficult for me, because, you know, why should I speak my language if I can't speak theirs? You know what I mean? So I would never say there was a worst interview, because for me, every interview that I've done has been beneficial to me in some way, shape, or form, and I genuinely believe that.
Joe, you've traveled the world. You've done 2 World Cups under your belt. You've traveled the continent as well. You've traveled around the country covering different spectacles. You've been to finals. You've seen title races. Your best moment?
I don't know. There's a lot. There's a lot of moments. I think probably the most memorable. There's 2 of them. There was the CAF Champions League final in 2013 when I was in Cairo. Al Ahly against Pirates that year was, I've never seen anything like that, and I don't know if I ever will again.
Wait, Joe. Sorry, Joe.
Sorry?
You actually saw that Lennox Bacala moment, yeah? You saw it live.
Yeah, I was there. Yeah, poor Lennox.
Yeah,
I don't think Pirates fans will never let him live that down. But no, like, I was lucky enough to be at both legs for that. Actually, the home leg at Orlando was one of the best atmospheres I've seen at a Pirates game. Of all the games that I've covered, that was electric that night. But the away leg, we actually got kicked out of the media box. It was meant to be like a limited amount of fans in the stadium, because it was not too long after the Port Said disaster. So, you know, there was meant to be a lot of rules on who was allowed in, but we got to the stadium about 2 hours before kickoff, and it was packed, like 40,000 people hanging off the, you know, hanging off the scoreboard and all sorts. And then at one point, it was just before kickoff, and some of the security guards came to us in the media area, and they said the fans are coming in, and we were like, "What do you mean? Like, they're coming? You might want to move. You can stay here if you like, and we're not going to tell you have to move, but we'd strongly, we'd suggest you get going." And we literally, seconds after we packed our laptops into our bags and stuff, it just was like a swarm of football fans came in and took up the media section and stuff. So we ended up watching it from like up in the gods, and at one point we were watching it with Fakili and Balula, like, in the director's box, because there was just nowhere else for us to go. It was wild. And then obviously the flares and you know, the lasers and all that kind of stuff, that was nuts. But then the other one that sticks out for me is another CAF game, and I don't think it'll be any surprise that it's the CAF games that stick out. When I went to Lubumbashi, watching TP at home when they played Super Sport was wicked.
The Sipon bullet.
Yeah, when Sipo, and I remember when he scored that goal, it just went dead, like, just dead quiet. That was a great trip. And just the fact that I've been able to say that I went to see Tipu Mazembe live, I think that's a sort of notch for me. It's something that I'll always remember, and that was a good trip. That one there's not too many of us went through, and that I really enjoyed that trip. But domestically as well, there's been a lot. You know, I remember watching Sundowns win lift the I can't remember what year it was, beat Platinum Stars on the last day, and that was when you got given the trip. That game, and that was a good one. There was the Nedbank Cup final when, sorry Pirates fans, the one you got hammered, Pirates fans got hammered by SuperSport. That was a really that was a crazy atmosphere. It felt like it became almost like ghostly after I think it was after the third goal went in, and it looked like it kind of looked like SuperSport took the foot off the gas a little bit, because they were like, this could get out of hand if this gets much worse. But there's been a few, mate. There's been a few. I think my first Soweto derby will always stick out. That was the one when Benny scored 2 and Pirates won. And that was my first Soweto derby. I remember coming out onto the concourse because I went as a fan in that game. I didn't go with my media accreditation. I bought a ticket and I just went and sat in the crowds. And that was just, I'll never forget that game. That was superb. And I came out and I got goosebumps because I just kind of felt like this is what football's meant to be. And obviously growing up in the UK, we have all the segregation that happens in the UK in terms of, you don't mix fans and to go into Soweto and into Soccer City and have that, just the atmosphere there was incredible. But again, another one with the Soweto derby. Just before I left Laduma, I actually got the chance to take my mum and dad to a Soweto derby. The last one we went to, and seeing my dad's face when, it was brilliant. I managed to sort them out box tickets because I didn't know at that point I was leaving Laduma. But they happened. It's the first time when they visited when a derby was on. So I was like, I need to make the most of this. So I took them and I got them in the box. And my dad walked out and the stadium was just kind of filling up. And he just stood there. He didn't say anything. He didn't look at me. He didn't say a word. He just I just left him. For
the first time he was not watching Sheffield Wednesday.
He's watched a few games without Wednesday in it, but I don't think he'll ever. He's never been to a game like that before, and I don't think he ever will. And the fact that I was able to sort that out for mum and dad is that's a really good memory for me. That
you know what's also amazing, Joe. All your favorite matches are when Pirates are losing.
Not intentional, trust me. Not intentional.
Joe, you obviously you are one of the few journalists that have a love and hate relationship with the fans on Twitter. Why do you continue to block people?
So for a long time I blocked people, and then I just started muting people because I find muting's funnier because some guys just like to. If I mute them, they kind of just shout into the universe and they think that I can see it, but I can't. But no, honestly, if I'm being brutally honest, the reason I blocked people, it was a mental health thing. It got to a point when it was so bad. I would never block someone for having a difference of opinion. I would never block someone for, disagreeing with something that I say. But when it starts getting personal, at that point, I'm just like, what's the point?
True.
I don't. Why must I wake up in the morning? I open my phone, I open Twitter, and I've just got like streams of abuse from people, calling me names, telling me to go home. You don't belong here, all that kind of stuff. I just don't need it, mate. That's basically that's the answer. And there was a point when it got that bad where it was kind of just like one strike and you're out. Originally I'd wait a little bit and people would give me abuse and I'd take it, and then I'd get to a stage I'd be like, nah, no, I'm done now. But then it got to a point I'm just like, if you give me like unnecessary abuse once, sorry, I'll see you later. But yeah, it got a little bit daft. I think after the I don't know if you might remember, after the AFCON, this last AFCON, after Bafana got knocked out, I just took a step back from it all because it became this weird idea that I was somehow linked to Stuart Baxter, and that when Bafana lost, it was kind of my fault as well, and I couldn't be arsed with it. Basically, I kind of took a step back. I stopped really giving opinions. I kind of just dealt purely with facts and with news and injuries and that kind of stuff, because it just, like I say, I couldn't be bothered with it anymore, and it was just affecting my mood. When you have the kind of followers that I have, if there's a good chunk of people, and I think it's why we talk about mental health and we talk about dealing with that kind of stuff. It did get to a point when I could have 10 lovely tweets from people saying, we really like that story, or thanks for the good work you do. And then 2 people saying, nah, you must, piss off back to England. You don't belong here. And that would be the thing that stuck. That would be the thing that I would, mull over for the rest of the night. And it just became a bit toxic, really. So I just started took a step back from it all.
You are one journalist that Sundowns fans, Chiefs fans, Pirate fans, they all have a common nickname for you. They call you the Plumber. How did you receive it?
Started from. I don't know where that came from. Yeah, I have no idea. I kind of adopted it in the end. I just took, kind of said, well, if that's what you want to call me, I'll take it. There was at one point when I went to Safa House for a Bafana press conference, and I got given you get a tag when you go in, and it was one that said Plumber on it, and I don't know if it was someone having a joke or if it was just like a funny coincidence, but yeah, I sat in this Bafana press conference with a tag on that said Safa Plumber on it, which was quite funny. But yeah, I don't know. The one thing I will say is that the fact that I got abuse from Pirates fans, Chiefs fans, Sundowns fans, obviously shows I was doing something right. Because if people don't know, and there's that many people who are unsure and think that I support another team, then I'm clearly, sitting on the fence in the right way.
Joe, do you consider yourself a reporter or a journalist?
It's a difficult one because I think there's a difference with a reporter and a journalist. A reporter is, you report what happens. So there's a lot of the time there's not investigative stuff involved, the way I see it anyway. But I also think that and this is purely my opinion, this is taking nothing away from anybody else. If the way that I cover football, it's about transfer news, it's about injuries, it's about what's going on at the clubs. That is I consider myself to be a journalist in that sense, but I also feel like when you've got guys who uncover these these things that are going on within organizations and that kind of stuff, that is a whole new level. There's it's a whole nother level. And aside from the football itself, there are journalists out there who literally risk their lives for a living. There are journalists out there who go into war zones, who, you see the stuff that's happens in the US where you got journalists calling out Donald Trump and that kind of stuff. And for me, that's a real journalist. That is, I think, in the grand scheme of things, what we do as football journalists is this. We report on something that we love to watch. We report on something that the public love to watch. But at no point have I put my my life at risk to cover a football game or to report what's happening at a football club. So as far as I'm concerned, they're the real journalists. The guys who are uncovering government conspiracies and all that kind of stuff. That's a real journalist as far as I'm concerned.
Well, my next question to you, Joe, is when it comes to certain clubs, some of your colleagues, they don't report, they don't give depth reports. But when it comes to a club like Sundowns, they will tell you that the player cost 7 million rand, 15 million rand, 20 million rand.
So it's probably not going to be the answer you want to hear, but the truth of it is, people will report what they can report. So find with some clubs that, for whatever reason, the source that it comes from, they say, please don't report the number. With this club, you can report the number. So with this player or whatever, you can report the number. You can report this and that. So, I mean, I can't speak for everybody else. It would be fair of me to do that. But what I can say is you can only report what you know to be truthful. What you know to be true. And like I say, with me, I would always try and get those kind of figures with whoever. I've reported transfer fees, Chiefs, Pirates, Sundowns, Maritzburg. Whenever I can get a fee, I will put it out there. And for whatever reason, I don't know why that is, people seem to be a lot more open to letting you write, what the figures are with Sundowns, And I think the other thing is, what you have to take into consideration is, Sundowns are also one of the only teams that truly spend money in South Africa. You know, a lot of the other clubs do freebies. You know, they do swaps, they do all that kind of stuff. So sometimes there isn't a figure to report because there was no fee paid.
Mm. Mm. No, I understand. From a journalist perspective, Joe, when you look at South African football and you look at the European football, specifically the English football, what seems to be the difference?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of differences, and I mean, just as an example, right? So I'll give you an example. When I started this new job, I obviously want to try and get into the same thing that I've been doing in South Africa, which is transfer news. That's always been my bread and butter. You know, that's the stuff that people know me for. You know, that's why they follow me on Twitter, because they want to see me on deadline day and all that kind of stuff. I can go onto the FA's website, the Football Association of England. I can go on their website, and there are documents on there which list how much, you know, agents have been paid by football clubs. This is all on the official website. It's available to everybody. This is not just me as a journalist. You can go on and you can find it yourself. They also have a list of every move that's happened over the course of a calendar year. And at the side of it'll be the club they've moved from, the player, the intermediary who did it, and the agency what the intermediary works for. That's all readily available for everybody. You know, that kind of transparency we just don't have in South Africa. You know, we'll have back and forth with, you know, we'll have 3-4 different agents all saying they represent the same player and all that kind of stuff. It's a difficult one. It's a difficult one with that stuff, you know. But I think ultimately, you know, you've got to look at it from a grander scheme of things as well. And before we are overly critical of a league like South Africa, you've got to look at how long the UK has been going. You've got to look at how long they've been doing this. You know, it's all well and good criticising, you know, certain aspects of a league, but and you compare it to the UK. I mean, the English Football League has been going on for hundreds of years. You know, this is not just something that's come up now, where South Africa is still relatively new to this, and I think that's where sometimes people need to be a little bit fairer in their you know, assumptions of how a league is working. And you know, I'm not going to come here and I'm not going to badmouth, you know, South African football, because, you know, it's given me everything that I have now is because of the time that I spent in South Africa. I've got so many good friends, you know, so many people that have helped me over the years, and I've got so many good experiences in South Africa that, you know, I'm not going to sit here and, you know, nitpick on things when I just don't think it's necessary, really. Because there's a lot of good that South Africa does, and, you know, if you look at the overall product of the PSL, I mean, it's superb. You know, you don't really get that anywhere else in the continent, and I think sometimes South Africa needs to get given a bit more of a break in some ways than it gets given when it comes to the way the football's run here.
Have you ever been misled by a source?
I don't think so. I think the thing that some people have to understand with the way transfer rumors and transfer news works is that just because something doesn't happen doesn't mean it was never on the cards. You know, I think that there is an idea that if I say something is being talked about and then it doesn't happen, that I was lying, that my source was wrong or whatever. But that's not the case. You know, there's been deals that have been in the works that have, you know, fallen through for whatever reason, or someone's pulled the rug out and the guy's gone somewhere else. And I don't think so. I mean, I've always been very careful with the stories that I do. Obviously, like I say, I can only speak for myself, but I would never write a story if I don't, you know, truly believe that there is something in it. And it's why I've always been very careful with the way that I word stuff as well. I will never say something is done unless I know something is done. You know, I would always use quite vague language if something was in the works, because I know that there needs to be a margin of error, because things change. And as soon as you say something is definitely happening, that's when you get called out. You know, that's when people come with their receipts afterwards and say, you said this was happening and then it didn't.
That's why you always start with, I've been led to believe.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. You know, I've been led to believe, sources, all that kind of stuff. And it's why I will always say that, you know, I use like could and all that kind of stuff. You know, could happen, might happen, may happen. Because until something is signed and it's on the dotted line, you don't know. I mean, look at someone like, I'm trying to think of an example. Look at Riva. Riva was going to Celtic. You know, he was going to Glasgow Celtic, and it was, as far as a lot of people were concerned, it was a done deal. And then something happened. It didn't happen. That doesn't mean that it was never going to happen, you know. Just circumstances change, and that's just the way it goes. So I think you've got to be very careful as a journalist to say something as fact when it's not done yet. And that's why, like I say, I always did and I always will be very careful with the wording of how I say things, and I try not to, you know, mislead anybody and put, I suppose, false hope in people's hearts when it comes to different players, because, like I say, things can change so rapidly. You know, you could be at the PSL on deadline day, and an agent calls you or a player calls you or whatever, and they say this is happening. You know, it's going to happen. You can go, cool. The guy who's actually signing has told me this is happening, so I can go, you know, I can write it and it's safe. But then the clubs, you know, they can't finalise terms, or the player can't finalise terms, or maybe there's no flight to get the thing done in time. And if you've said that this is a done deal, then you look stupid. So you've always got to make sure that you're telling people the situation as it is, not as it could potentially be.
So sometimes players are your sources.
Sources come from everywhere, mate. Players, agents, club officials, you know, they can come from all over the place. And, you know, it's the name of the game, really. I think that anyone who thinks otherwise, you know, is being a little bit naive. You know, there's a lot of different people who will, you know, give you information, who will give you snippets. You know, sometimes someone won't tell you something specifically, but they'll say to you, you know, just that here's a little piece of rope for you to tug on, you know, see if you can go find it out from someone else and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of things like that you can dig little bits up from. But like I say, the biggest thing for us is to make sure you're on solid ground. So very rarely is one source enough when you're going to do something like, you know, like if you're going to do a big story, you need to check it from a few different angles.
What has been your craziest deadline story?
I don't know really, because deadline day has never really been that big. You know, there hasn't been many deadline days when something major has happened. A lot of the time, the bigger deals get done earlier. You know, they don't really get done on deadline day. The Jeremy Brockie to Maritzburg one was interesting last time out, just because it was so close to not happening. You know, it was literally on the cusp, where it was just kind of coming through towards the end. But yeah, so there's, like I say, there's not really been any massive ones like that. And I've broken a lot of stories over the years, so it all kind of merges into one, to be honest.
Your best PSL 11. Joe Crann's best PSL 11.
Jeez, you're putting me on the spot, yeah.
Yes.
Based on what though, right? So, are we talking the best the player played, or are we talking over the course of the time that I was in South Africa?
Over the course of time you've been in South Africa.
Right. Because obviously, you know, just as a disclaimer, you know, there's been players like Tefu Mashamaite, for instance. Tefu was, I think was it the 2013-14 season when Chiefs won the league, and he was immense. But then obviously he left after that, and then there was a big period where, so in terms of, if I was picking a season where a player played, you know, Tefu would be it as a centre back. But if I'm picking a best 11, you know, it's really tough to pick a best 11 because, and I don't know if you'll agree with me, there are not that many truly consistent players in South Africa, you know, who have been. If I look at my 10-year period in South Africa, I look at probably Hlompo. You know, Hlompo has been he's been consistently good my entire time I've been in South Africa. He's had some seasons that have been better than others, but he's never had a bad season. I don't remember seeing I remember seeing Plumber have a bad season. I think, possibly Dean Furman for the most part. I think Dean's been, he doesn't often give you big 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 performances, but he'll never really give you anything lower than a 7. He's a good, consistent player. And it's like I say, it's tough to say really. And it's not just me avoiding the question. This is generally like, it's tough to pick for me, it would be a lot easier to pick an 11 based on specific seasons. So, I look at like Tsepo Masilela, Tsepo Masilela 2013-14 was immense. He was the best left back in the country by a country mile. Itu 12-13 was immense. Obviously, Karma's probably a good one. Karma's been relatively consistent since. I remember when I first moved to South Africa, Karma was still at Ajax, and a couple of the guys in the office said to me, there's this young lad at Ajax. You should probably keep an eye on him. He's probably going to be a bit of a superstar. I remember watching him. There's one game when they played Pirates, and if he'd taken his chances, I'm pretty sure Karma could have had about 7 goals that day.
I remember
that. And I just remember thinking, if he can sort his finishing out, he's going to be a player. And he did. When he got to Sundowns, he sort of improved on that. I think he still missed a lot more chances than he should have done, but he definitely improved on that. So he'd be a good shout. But yeah, like I said, I really don't want to sound like I'm skipping the question, because it's a good question, but it is tough when you're looking for consistency, because you look at someone like Keegan Dolly, and Keegs was amazing, but then Keegan left. So I couldn't really pick him in a best 11, because a long time he wasn't even in the country. So it's tough. There's players like Percy, like Keegan, like I say, Tefu, who they had this amazing time when they were sort of hitting this purple patch, but then they moved on, and that's quite a tough one. I think it's tough to say really, and because I don't want to sound like I'm sort of bailing on your question, but it is, for me, it's tough to do because of I suppose the general lack of consistency in the league.
No, Joe, I understand. But after so many years, 10 years at Soccer Laduma, it's 10 years, am I correct?
Just under,
yeah. You got a job at the Star. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, so basically I got offered a job writing about the football club that I've supported my whole life. It was just not really something I could say no to. If you'd asked me at 14 years old what your dream job would be, I think someone said, well, we want to pay you to follow Sheffield Wednesday and write about them. That probably would have been it. Obviously it's a little bit tougher at the minute because I'm not there. But I would, when I eventually do get back, I will be travelling up and down the lengths of the UK, watching Sheffield Wednesday for a living, and that for me is a perfect job. People always joke in South Africa about what team do you support, and who's your South African team, who's your your league team. But for me, there's only ever been one team, and the fact that now I'm being paid to watch them and to write about them, and I'm getting to do press conferences with the Sheffield Wednesday management stuff. It's all it's all a bit of a dream come true for me, and it was always going to take a big job for me to sort of walk away from South African football and walk away from a job that I've loved and from a country that has been so good to me. But anybody that knows me knows how much I love Sheffield Wednesday. So it was always going to be something that I couldn't really say no to.
Joe, who do you think will win the title this season?
That's a very good question, and I think it would be unfair of me to make a decision on that until I've seen the first couple of games, because these teams are going to look potentially very, very different to what they looked like before this whole break. I honestly thought that you know, before this, I thought Sundowns were going to take over the Chiefs. I had a feeling that Sundowns were going to kick on, and that they'd find their form, and you know, Chiefs were going to falter. But now, with everything that's happened, that could still happen, obviously. But I'm very interested to see what happens with how the teams look. I think Sundowns have definitely got the players, they've definitely got the manager, and you know, as we all know, you know, some of us have seen this movie before. We know what Sundowns are capable of. But I think, you know, I like I say, I think if we were to base it before the lockdown, I honestly thought Sundowns were going to take it. But now, like I say, I would have to see a couple of games and see where people are at in terms of fitness, in terms of you know, how their players, you know, obviously someone like Chiefs have lost George Malaleka now to Sundowns, so things like that all play a role. So I'd be very, very interested to see what happens in the first couple of games before I, you know, really make a decision on who I think's going to win it.
Let me. Yeah, you've had your sip. They've been asking for you to have a sip.
This is something I'm going to miss. South African beer. I'm going to miss South African beer. I'm going to have to take some over with me.
Joe, you've given me Itumeleng Khune, you've given me Tefo Mashamaite, you've given me Dean Furman, you've given me Tsepo Masilela, Hlompo Kekana, Kama Billiard, Keegan Dolly, Pesitao. You've given me 8. So we are 3 shots of your best 11. Come on, Joe. Have a sip again.
What positions do we need there?
We need a right back, we need a right centre back, and we need a number 9.
I'm gonna have to go on Verte for number 9, just because of how good he was. You know, obviously that I unfortunately came to South Africa towards the end of Bele's career, but one of my first, you know, the fact that he's still, in my entire time in South Africa, the only man who's ever got 20 goals in a season. You know, he can't really be knocked off that spot. Right centre back. I tell you what I'll go for, and it's not based on anything in terms of longevity, but I thought Alias Gut, when he was at Sundowns, was an absolute game changer. I thought he was so good for you. And then right back, who would I go for? We've struggled for fullbacks a little bit. You know, look at the national team, and it's been a position that's been, you know, sort of chopped and changed a lot. Do you know what I'm going to say? And this is purely based on how good I think he could be. I'm going to go Reeve Frosler, just because I think Reeve has the potential to be one of the best right backs South Africa's ever had. I think he's got everything. I think as a modern day fullback, he's got everything you need to really kick on. And I'm hoping that he follows me to Europe at some point.
Can I ask you a question, Joe? Do you think Reeve likes to be a millionaire? Does he want to be a millionaire?
Who doesn't want to be a millionaire?
So, can you show the people the badge that you're wearing today?
Oh no, this is purely for you, mate. This is
that's where millionaires are made, Joe.
Now, look, I think honestly, I think the next step is for Reeve to go overseas. I think this, you know, he's at a good age. I think he's ready now. I think he's ready to get out there and take that next step. I'm not sure. I'm not sure with Reeve how much else he can learn, you know, in South Africa. He's been about for so long already. You know, he's 20, 21, 22, and he's already got so many seasons under his belt in South Africa. And I think as a fullback, it would do him well to you know, try something else out and move on to Europe if that opportunity comes up for him.
The future of journalism in this country.
It's bright, mate. There's a lot of journalists out there that are, you know, doing a great job, and you know, I think, you know, I've had a few people message me saying that they miss me and all that kind of stuff, which is really nice to hear. But I know the guys are doing a great job out there. There's a lot of good journalists in South Africa who are, you know, trying to do their digging and trying to do their thing. And it's not an easy place to be because there's not a lot of people who want to give you these scoops. You know, you've really got to dig for them. So, you know, I think it's healthy, mate. I think it's healthy. I think there's you know, obviously you've got the old guard, you know, people like the Duma, like Kickoff, like the Sweating and the Dailies, but then you've got the new age of far post, and obviously Tiani's been about, you know, T knows what he's been in the game a long time, and you know, obviously there's you need to have that competition. I think it's good to have that competition from everybody. I think it's good to have people sort of nipping at your heels a little bit.
Joe Crann, South African football fans want to tell you that they love you, they appreciate your work, and please unblock them.
I don't know who I've blocked anymore, mate. It's been a while. Some of them have been blocked for years. I don't know who I haven't blocked, to be honest.
It's okay, Joe. We really miss you, and your one-word answers on social media, they're not helping us a lot, because I mean, you need to live up to your name. You are the plumber here.
I'll keep trying to, you know, trying to dig up some bits and bats. Like I said, South African football is part of me now. I can't just walk away from that. You might have seen I did a little bit on Bongani Zungu and his potential move. Some stuff is probably going to still come through to me. I'll probably still get little bits that filter through, you know, get through the cracks, and I'll keep trying to do my best. And I'll always come back here. It doesn't matter how long I'm gone. You know, it doesn't matter what comes next for me. This place is home. You know, this place is something that will always be a part of my life. And don't get me wrong. I will. I'm looking forward to watching Wednesday play, and I'm looking forward to watching them around the country. But I'm not sure any of them are going to get to that game in Cairo.
Joe. Joe, listen. We love you. We appreciate you, and we hope that you do your best at the start. Just know that you don't only represent the Crann family, and you represent us as well, because you've been part of us for so many years. We will miss your sneakers giveaway. We will miss everything, Joe, that you've been doing on social media.
Thanks very much, man. It means a lot, and I think everybody, when you do something in life, you want to feel like you leave it having left some kind of mark, and I like to think that I've done that. You know, the fact that some people like me and some people don't is fine. I'm all right with that, and as long as I feel like I can walk away from South African football with my head held high, and I've got a lot of good friends, a lot of people that I've met, people that I haven't even met. You know, people like yourself. We've spoken on social media. We've never met in person, and you know, that's fine. You know, that's just how life is these days in the modern world. But like, thank you very much for asking me to have a chat. It's nice to, like I said on my tweet before, it's nice to put my South African football head on again.
Yeah, thank you so much, Joe. We hope that you have a good evening. We appreciate your time, and may God bless you all the time, man. Thank you.
Thank you
for
for
giving us your hour. We don't take this for granted.
We're not doing anything else these days, are we? We're all stuck inside anyway.
But at least you are drinking, Joe.
Yeah, no, I made sure I stocked up.
Yeah, all right. Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Cheers, mate. Take care.